Saw 3 is quite an iffy film. It has some great ideas such as the relationship that is built between Lynn and Jigsaw himself, John Kramer, as well as a lot of the trap ideas and the reason for why they are actually there. But it's also pretty temperamental in the sense of Jigsaw's morals finally becoming a little bit clouded by putting someone who's a grieving father and now alcoholic in a trap. I understand why in the sense of how he is completely pushing aside his daughter and becoming a revengeful alcoholic dad, to also the bloated and overdrawn out runtime of the film, to everything just being incredibly slow. Thank you for this, Jeff. And then Amanda Young still being pretty cool, but yeah.
Maybe we could try some corticosteroids, you know, like dexamethasone. Why don't you fucking tell me something that I don't know, you stupid cunt?
But at the same time, what this film does have to provide is some pretty cool traps, some that I actually think are some of my favorite in the entire series. From Saw 2 to Saw 3 kind of provides a little bit of a look at what Saw 1 started off as in regards to the psychological traps. Yes, there are some gory ones here and there, and this is the first film in the entire franchise for me to cover with the unbeatable and rigged traps. Oh lord fucking help me. Saw 5 is going to be pretty interesting. But at the same time, I'm here to provide my thoughts on how I would survive every single trap in Saw 3. Before I give you guys my thoughts, please comment down below how you would survive every single trap in Saw 3 and also what your favorite trap of the movie is. Please comment down below, let me know. I think this movie actually has some pretty damn awesome traps and some that are actually kind of my favorite in the entire series. But without wasting any time, let's get started. Saw 3 opens up with Eric Matthews' test, where he is now chained up in the shit room from the first two movies. Where the first movie took place pretty much entirely in this one room, Saw 2 brought it back at the very end, with Daniel Matthews and Amanda Young returning to escape Xavier, while also having Amanda put Eric Matthews in this room as well, chaining him up, leaving him for dead at the end of the film. At the beginning of Saw 3, we see Eric Matthews wake up in the room once again, where he then uses a toilet tank lid to break his own foot, snap it, and pull it out of his chains. After trying many different things, such as trying to grab the gun, trying to find the flashlight, while also trying to use the saw that we had seen in previous films earlier. Eventually resorting to the toilet tank lid used to kill Zepp in the first movie at the hands of Adam. As said previously, he breaks his own foot, pulls it out of the shackles, and here we are with our title card. Now, I think there are actually other ways that he could have survived here. One would say that he could possibly use the saw to saw off the bone that was actually on his foot where his ankle is. This would be incredibly painful, but it would at least provide enough room for him to slip out of his shackles. But I don't think he necessarily needs to do this. I don't think he even needs to do anything to himself necessarily to actually escape his chains. As previously mentioned in my How to Beat Saw video, they could use something else to actually bust the lock on their shackle to actually unlock it and get out. I think the same thing can be done here. When he grabs the gun, he notices there is no ammunition in the magazine. He could possibly use the handle or the butt of the gun to smack open the lock using blunt force trauma, or he could do the exact same thing once again with the handle of the saw or the toilet tank lid itself to bust open the lock and just walk out of there a free man. Moving on to the classroom trap with Troy, he has found himself in a trap where he is chained by multiple different areas on his body, with hooks in his skin, his Achilles, his jaw, you name it. He has to rip them all out before the bomb goes off, blowing him up where he will never be seen again. This is our first of the unbeatable traps within the Saw series. This trap basically covers everything in the sense of, hey, you're in this trap, you can't get out, fuck you. So with these traps, it's more or less a means of trying to find the best way to up your chances of survival. But Saw 3, I actually think both the angel trap and the classroom trap are technically beatable. A lot of them require a lot of knowledge in the sense of stuff prior. For one, Troy would have to know that the door is actually welded shut before he even starts his trap and trying to escape. That's step 1. But at the same time, step 2 is him ripping out every single chain except for the jaw. Because you can't really rip this chain out. Even if he could get it out, the door is welded shut. He'd have to have prior knowledge of that and would have to rip out every single chain aside from the one on his jaw. Eventually, after he does that and it's only the jaw that remains, he would have enough room to move around and grab certain things such as a chair, a table, a desk to use as cover from the bomb. But at the same time, I've heard a lot of people say that the batteries in the bomb are actually exposed. You could possibly go over there and take them out. One thing I noticed when watching Saw 3 again the other day with my sister is that it is mentioned that the only reason the police and the bomb squad actually knew where Troy was and the remains of the Jigsaw test is the fact that someone on the outside heard a bomb go off, so they called them. They were then called to the scene. This is exactly what Troy needs to do. Troy needs to find a way to survive this bomb without ripping out his jaw, with prior knowledge of the door, being welded shut, and trying to find a way to blow up the bomb and survive the explosion. When I looked at the remains of Troy afterwards, all I noticed was no incineration whatsoever. There were bookcases and desks all over the place. Even the bookcase still had books on it without being incinerated whatsoever, which leads me to the conclusion that there was no fire involved in the actual explosion, that all it was nails flying everywhere. Otherwise, the bookcase would have been incinerated, so would the books, so would the desks, so would the plastic all over the place with the kid tables and everything. So therefore, all Troy has to really worry about is the nails that got stuck into his body anyway, ripping him to shreds. In this test, what Troy could possibly do after he has only the jaw remaining is grab a desk or a table and use that almost as a barricade, as cover, laying down beneath it. With the desk flipped to its side and him hiding behind it, it could possibly act as enough cover for him to then survive the nail explosion, where he might get hit by a few things but enough to survive. With the bomb going off, people on the outside would still hear where he is, so therefore they would be able to then call the police and everything. They would then be called to him, where they would then be able to cut down the door and he would still have a heightened chance of survival. Moving on to Detective Carey's trap with the angel trap, she has been living among the dead for all this time and she will meet her true family and be with them again in death. I don't know, this trap is really weird as to why Carey was even in there, aside from the fact that they kind of just needed to get rid of her because she was hot on Jigsaw's tail and knew his MO. But this is another impossible test where Carey was not meant to survive. She has a few hooks latched into her ribcage, and after the timer runs out, it will rip out her ribcage, silencing her forever. And in this, there's also a key inside a vial of acid, which will then disintegrate the key after a few seconds, so she has to be fast to grab it. I think that this trap technically can be won, but at the same time, the impossibility is still extremely high because Amanda, as we see at the end of the movie, does kill, Lynn Denlin, or at least shoots her in cold blood and everything, even though she was advised not to. At the same time, we see the same thing in regards to her having rigged multiple traps in the past. This is something that we see with Troy's trap and Detective Carey's trap. These are rigged. These are not meant to be winnable. But there are a few pieces of detail that I have picked up on. Although the impossibility of surviving is very, very high due to Amanda Young still being there, and if she did find a way out, she would still be technically executed, I think that there is still a way for her to get out of the trap itself and, up her chances of survival. One thing I noticed when rewatching the movie was that there are two locks on her shoulders connected to the chains hoisting her up. The brace around her neck is the same leather brace that is connected to the rest of her harness, which is then connected to the contraption itself with the latches and being able to open it up, which is what she eventually does after she grabs the key. She uses the key to unlock the lock that is actually on her chest, but I advise her not to do this because, as we know, if you're pulling a lock sideways and everything, you would not be able to actually unlock it. It would not bust open. That's why we bash a lock down, because that would, bash open the deadlock and everything, opening it up. So if it's being pulled sideways as the contraption, it would buy her enough time to do what I'm going to say next. What I advise her to do is to grab the vial with the acid inside of it, because the acid is strong enough to actually dissolve a key. So therefore, I guess it would be strong enough to dissolve these wires that are on either side of her body connected to the trap. If she disables these or detaches these by using the acid, it would completely disable the trap. It would have nothing to be able to actually rip out her ribcage. So therefore, the trap is basically faulty anyway as soon as those wires are removed. They're very thin wires. I have no doubt in my mind, by pouring the acid onto those wires and everything, that would completely dissolve them and would actually disable the trap. And you're able to pull the vial out as it's not screwed in by anything and can just be slipped out of the little ring that it's actually being holstered up in, and therefore you can grab it and pour it out onto the wires. After you completely disable those and completely dissolve them, basically disabling the trap as a whole, there are the two locks on either shoulder connected to the chains hoisting her up. If she then uses that key, which looks to be the same key to what are the same locks as the one on her chest, she could then unlock both of those chains and she would then drop down. She would still have the thing inside of her ribcage, of course, and the harness still on, but at least she would be able to go seek help if Amanda Young does not get there in time, or if she's not there in the first place. She would probably execute her anyway, but my solution is grab key, pour acid onto wires, it would completely disable the trap, and the lock on her chest seems to be the exact same one on either of her shoulders, so therefore unlock the shoulders, she would drop down and then she would have a heightened chance of survival. I don't know, this one and Troy's trap and the next one I'm going to talk about, which is the shotgun color, are all left up to speculation due to the lowered chances of survival because they are technically rigged, and I'll talk about why the shotgun color is technically rigged. Now talking about the shotgun color with Lynn Denlin, the only option I really have for this one is to find something to really block the triggers, so therefore detonating it on purpose but blocking the triggers with, say, fabric or wood or anything to be able to stop them from actually hitting the shotgun shells and firing it. Because even if you remove the shotgun shells itself, I feel like it's too flimsy and too, sensitive, as Amanda does mention in the film, that it would still fire at some point. Not only that, if you try to use like a blade or whatever to end up taking out the shells and everything, there's still the trigger device inside the shell that could still be fired and harm you and kill you anyway. With this said as well, trying to use maybe one of the tools such as the angle grinder or, you know, the little buzzsaw or a drill to completely disable the trap could still set it off. I also wouldn't put it past Amanda that the key itself does not unlock the trap, because she has rigged the angel trap, she has rigged Troy's trap and everything as well, so therefore I would not put it past her to have that key as a way to actually set it off. And it is very flimsy and sensitive as it is, because Amanda mentions this. So therefore maybe even using the key is not the best idea, because it could possibly set the trap off if you're not too careful. And need I mention, with this, there are the sensors around the room. If you try to make a run for it, it will go off. So therefore putting something in between, completely blocking the triggers, you would then be able to walk out without even worrying about the sensors and everything. And I wouldn't put it past John or Amanda to have a remote detonator to be able to set off the trap anyway. Like, you know, the only other option I really have is to, you know, put the finger monitor or the heart monitor, detach it from John. You've got a little bit of time before it goes off, as we've seen in the film anyway at 2 different moments, that she could attach it to herself instead, and therefore that would give her a limited amount of time. Killing John, killing Amanda, and then so on and so on, you'd be able to then survive and find a way to deactivate it. I don't know, the shotgun collar, the only real solution I have. Everything's too flimsy. I wouldn't put it past Amanda to rig it even further, because she's the one who built it. I feel like the best option is to find something to jam the triggers themselves, so therefore there is a heightened chance of just being able to walk out of there and get it removed professionally by people who could possibly cut it off anyway. The next 2 traps, the freezer room and the pig vat, are kind of just given to us as well, except Jeff is so fucking slow that it's almost impossible for him to bloody beat it anyway. I think he beat the pig vat with just a sense of luck. But when it comes to the freezer room, there are a few options that are better than actually using the key. Obviously, Jeff will need to use the key, and he will need to get that. But to heighten the woman's chances of survival and to buy her time, I feel like the only other options that there are in this trap is to find a jumper or use his sweater to then put it over the nozzles, or even use his shirt for the exact same thing as well to cover the nozzle, so therefore the spray is not as prominent or as big of a radius to then be able to freeze her to death. I feel like moving her out of the way wouldn't really work, considering that the chain is so restricted and her height as well. She's basically standing up straight with it lifted up above her head anyway. But I really feel like just by, you know, putting something over the nozzles would be able to block it enough to buy him more time to go grab the key. I also feel like maybe removing the hoses themselves would work. By ripping out the cables and the hoses or putting a knot in them would stop the water flow from being able to freeze her as well, at least putting a kink in it, so therefore it would stop the water flow. I think this could possibly work and buy a bit of time to go grab the key, but at the same time, the easiest option for this one was literally given to us, but Jeff was so late, is by literally not taking his fucking time, stop being petty, and going and grabbing the key. Maybe using his jumper as something to put over his face so he doesn't freeze his face against the pipe, giving him more reach, and then grabbing the key and unlocking her from her chains, pulling her outside, and look, she could use the furnace then in the next room, in the next trap, as a heat source and everything to warm her up, because she would be, you know, suffering from hypothermia after she gets out of there. Next up, we have the pig vat. This is a trap where Jeff has to save the judge who sentenced the person who killed his son to only 6 months in prison. Jeff has to get a key by burning all of his son's prized possessions, toys and belongings and plushies and memories inside of a furnace. Therefore, the key will drop down and he'll be able to unlock the neck brace around the judge's neck before he is drowned in pig guts. Again, this trap is very straightforward. I really looked at this trap trying to see if there was any other option to be able to actually, you know, get the key, because I really feel like attaching anything to the actual device itself with the leftover hooks before it becomes the lightning round. Pig after pig after pig after pig being dropped down. I really feel like blocking it with anything and attaching it to the cable wouldn't really do anything due to how fast it is and everything. I still feel like you wouldn't be able to attach anything to those hooks with a fast enough amount of time to make it sturdy enough that it wouldn't fall down as well anyway. I don't think there's even a way to jam the grinder. The difference between the glass grinder in Spiral and this one is that that was an actual grinder. There were little blocks and everything, therefore you couldn't get anything circular inside it to be able to, you know, jam the device, such as a bin or a can. In this sense, I really feel like trying to put anything inside the grinder to jam it wouldn't really work, whether it's a barrel, whether it's anything at all, because these are razor blades. These are grinder blades that are actually razors that you would find on a buzzsaw or something, so therefore it's just grinding it up, cutting it and slicing it anyway, little chunks, until they actually fall inside anyway. I don't think there is any way to block this contraption. I don't think there is any way to even jam the little, what is it called? The little wire or the conveyor belt, I'm going to call it, with the pigs on them to be able to stop the contraption from moving to be able to buy more time. The only solution I really have with this trap is to do what is provided in the film. I don't think any of the other solutions that other people have provided would work because there is no way to stop the grinder due to the circular buzz saws and also due to the velocity of the conveyor belt itself and how hard it would be to attach anything on it. I also feel that knocking the pigs off wouldn't be viable either because you could knock it off and therefore it would fall into the grinder anyway a little bit faster. Or even say that you did want to knock them off, I feel like the pigs are too big, too heavy for any normal person to be able to then move and knock off with their own weight and strength. As you see here with the contraption moving and the conveyor belt, it takes quite a bit of stopping force for these things to actually fall. Also adding to my theory that trying to hook anything else onto it would make them fall anyway. So by Jeff literally not being a fucking slowpoke and going to grab the key by burning the stuff in the furnace and getting it and unlocking it a little bit faster, I think that's the only option, but Jeff does do this anyway, so this one's provided to us. And finally, we come to the rack. Everyone's favorite trap in this fucking movie, it seems. One that my sister couldn't watch because she was so squeamish and can't deal with slow breaking bones. If you want to see her reaction to the trap and the movie itself, please go check out my reaction video with my sister to Saw 3 that was posted a couple days ago. Hey, plug. Timothy Young is the man who actually ran over Jeff's son. This was an accident, of course, but he was a drunk driver. He didn't serve the time that was deserved. He only served 6 months and everything. Jeff has a major vendetta against this guy. So how would this guy really survive? I have a feeling that there is a very easy way to survive, but here are a few options. There are only a few things holding his feet, head, and hands in place to be able to twist them to their full capacity, shattering his neck, his arms, and his legs. And they're these little pins that look almost like tuning pegs on a guitar or a violin, or any other string instrument for that matter besides a piano. I don't know much about pianos. If that's incorrect, please tell me. These are completely screwed in and drilled into his feet, his hands, and his head. Yes, they are actually drilled into his feet. Yes, they're drilled into his hands and they're sort of compressing against his head. By unscrewing them, it would be incredibly painful, but at least it would give him an option to be able to slip it out and have nothing that is restricting his movement from being able to move out of the device itself by slipping out his arm. Even though, he's got the little shackle around his upper arm or his upper legs and everything, he would still be able to move his forearm and, under his knee all freely and everything. He would still be able to move those if they unscrewed them. But if he unscrews these little knobs and everything out of his feet, out of his hands, given how painful it might be, and even his head, because there are still a couple connected to his head as it is, if he unscrews those, there is no restriction from being able to resist against it and pull them out of the little devices themselves that are twisting his hands, his legs, and not his head. His head's still kind of held in a contraption, but at least there's nothing holding it in to twist his head as it is. But moving on to simpler options, I do think that using Jeff's method of grabbing the key and carefully unscrewing it is a really good idea. This is actually one moment where I have to give Jeff a lot of credit in the way of how careful he was to unscrew the key itself. But my big problem with this is the fact that Jeff wasn't really wary of friendly fire. Yes, I know a lot of you found that fucking hilarious in my reaction video. A lot of you have pointed that out in my comments in regards to, friendly fire and everything that I mentioned. I'm glad that entertained you guys. But I do seriously feel that if Jeff was a little bit wary of his surroundings and had Judge Holden out of the way, then he would have been able to unscrew the key and get it out in time. The judge should have also been looking for the actual place where the key needs to be, inserted into to turn off the device or open it up. And that's not what the judge was doing. The judge was kind of just being a complete fucking useless idiot and not looking around at all. But Jeff did the right thing. I think he should just be more aware of his surroundings. But I think there is an easier option. One thing I noticed when rewatching this trap is that there are these small little wires attached to the head, both feet, and both hands. If he rips out each one of those, there is absolutely nothing powering those little areas of the machine itself, of the rack, so therefore they would not turn anyway, buying them an unlimited amount of time to go grab that key and to unlock the device. But there's also the simple case of, on the ground in this wide shot, you can see the wires leading off screen to what I presume is a power source. And I feel like if you disable all of these wires by ripping them out of the power socket of which they are connected to, no matter how far off screen they might be, I don't know if they're in a different different room. I don't know if they're in the same room or whatever, but if you rip those out, it will completely turn off the machine, disable it, and no one would be hurt. Timothy Young would still be alive, and I just find this to be the easiest option. Saw 3, aside from the impossible traps, is quite an easy one to figure out because everything is technically given to us in regards to the freezer room, in regards to, you know, the pig vat. And the rack, there are these really big exposed wires that could quite easily be ripped out. So this one's kind of easy, aside from the impossible traps with Troy, Detective Carey, and Lynn Denlin with the shotgun color, because I wouldn't put it past Amanda to rig the shotgun color as well. But either way, guys, what do you guys think? I want to see what you guys have to say down in the comment section below. How would you survive each trap? What are the different methods that you would use? And what's your favorite trap in Saw 3? Please comment down below, let me know. Do we should also look out for my sister's reaction to Saw 4 coming very, very soon. Can't wait to bring that one to you guys. I do want to do a reaction video for at least the first Purge movie, like not the first Purge, the movie, but the Purge movie that was released in 2013. I do want to do a reaction video to that one, guys, as the new Purge movie comes out soon, the Forever Purge, and I do want to do reactions to those. I do have quite a few series and videos coming out very, very soon for like Hostel. I also have, what is it, not Human Centipede, Cube as well. I want to start all those series with you guys. I can't wait to bring those videos to you guys. Do look out for more videos coming very, very soon, whether horror-related, live streams, you name it. Please comment down below, let me know. Do we also have on the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and Twitch to watch my live streams and keep up to date with your content coming to the channel. Do be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when new videos are up every single week. Do be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.